Hello, hello, hello. It looks like I'm live, but for some reason, it may not be. So let's hope that we are live. There we are. Thank goodness. I don't want to start another presentation, so it's me. Hello. Sometimes we never know if we're live or not, so that is always a question when you're doing live streaming. And so, yes, it's the Let's Get Visible show. So let's see whether or not we are going to start. We are starting. So, yes, it's the Let's Get Visible show. Let's get visible, visible. Anyway, we'll just continue on. Try and do this in 15 minutes for LinkedIn. And so I'm Jane Gardner. There's my bio. I work with my husband in a structural engineering firm. In 2018, I was interested in TV. So I have 4 TV channels, and they're all about business or finding your purpose and business success. And we're going to start the presentation now because we've got 15 minutes. So stop hiding behind your slides, show your face, show your personality, show up on a regular basis. You need to share your knowledge, share your value, and people will come back again and again. So we have talked about mindset and how that can stop you from getting visible. As well, we've talked about your website and how to make it promise what you are and make you visible by sharing your message and your ideas and your concepts, etc., and what to do about making your website such. And I've got to get a membership site up where you can go and look at the previous episodes. So that's my thing for this weekend. So next week we'll have a link for you to go to see free all the previous episodes. As well, we talked about influencers and how they can boost your business, how they can make you more visible by you interviewing them and increasing your audience, because you also are using the influencers' audience in terms of getting some interviews from them. And so right now we're just talking relatively about podcasting and how to increase your visibility with podcasting. I think you can probably logically figure out how podcasting will help increase your visibility. But people are listening to podcasts everywhere, including you, and you can provide your content in an audible format to reach a wider audience. So last episode, we looked at what kind of podcast you might be interested in doing, and you were to brainstorm a list of possible topics for your first podcast by looking at what you love to talk about, what you're passionate about, what your audience might be interested in that you might want to talk about, and of course what podcasts are popular in your market, as well as hot topics in your market. So, of course, you can go over to iTunes and do a search for your topic and see what kind of podcasts come up. See if they're still active podcasts or if they've died out. And, figure out what kind of topic you might be interested in talking about to keep you visible. So, I've just made a little image of the podcast that I have done actually, and I need to go back and do some more. HomeBiz Startup TV is actually a video cast on iTunes. iTunes allows you to do audio podcasts as well as, I call them, video casts, where it's basically videos. So you can go see that show on iTunes, as well as Finding Your Purpose is on iTunes and everywhere else that you can get into a podcast, like Spotify and I don't know. Anyway, all of them. Next week we'll go in depth on what exactly where my podcasts are, and then Solopreneur Success Strategies is one of the first podcasts that I started. I haven't done a lot with it lately, but it's still there and getting downloads, and so we'll have a look at that next week in terms of the mechanics of a podcast quickly. But it's also being distributed to podcasts everywhere in locations. I think Google, or was it Apple? One of them just closed their podcast feed, but it's in most places other than that. It'll still be in Spotify, which is fairly popular. So today we're going to talk about planning your podcast since you've figured out your topic. The only way you're going to be able to do a podcast when you have a business where you're trying to sell things as well is to prepare and plan for your podcast. So what kind of things are you going to need to plan for? So you're not an expert podcaster yet, and you can't just hit record and bang out an entertaining and informative podcast. So you need to prepare well. If you don't, you'll find yourself starting over and over again, and you'll waste precious time. So eventually you'll become a pro, and it won't take much prep. But for now, you need to figure out the kind of things that you have to think about before you actually even get an interviewee. So first off, we've talked about your topic, and you've got an idea on that. So now you've got to figure out your podcasting schedule. Decide how often you're going to post a new episode and create a schedule. Weekly is good, but it may be difficult if you're new to podcasting. At first, recording, editing, and posting your podcast may take some time until you get into a rhythm. So before you decide how often you'll do shows, you may want to do a test run and see how long the process takes. Then it's easier to fit it into your regular schedule. Your broadcasting schedule is especially important if you're covering time-sensitive topics like current news in your niche. In this case, you may want to broadcast more than once a week. On the other hand, if you cover evergreen topics, the schedule is not as important. So for me, just as a tip for you, I basically, when I first did Solopreneur Success Strategies, I did it on Google Hangouts, which is a video media platform, which is gone now. And what it was is I had 7 daily shows on different theme topics. And how I managed that, as well as run a business, is I did them on a Sunday. So I planned ahead of time. That's why I love my slides, because they help me to keep me on track. And I did 7 shows on a Sunday. And that was what I did every Sunday. And then I could just schedule them out on release. Because what's great about this is, of course, you can schedule them. You don't have to do them live. So let's go back to the presentation. And basically, the next thing you have to think about is how long is your podcast? How long are they going to be? A test run will help you give you a realistic idea. Keep in mind not only your ability to talk, but also your audience's ability to listen. Podcasts that are over 30 minutes stretch attention spans, so it's better to make it shorter, more tightly focused podcast than those that ramble. This is the case where you need to listen to your audience. Once you get your podcast going, get their feedback on episode length. They might want it more or they might want it less. And depending on your interviewee, most of them, you really have to tell them that it's only going to be 15 minutes because they can talk quite a bit and it can go up to 45 minutes if you're not careful. So you have to decide how long your podcast is going to be. And if you're interviewing something, it is possible for it to be 45 minutes. So keep it down to 30 if you can. And then scripting the episodes. It's good to use a pre-written script for your podcasts, especially at first. This keeps you from rambling or going off topic. Use it as an outline that you follow as you speak. Gradually, you'll be able to script your episodes more loosely as you get the hang of podcasting. Eventually, you may be able to use a rough outline or even just a topic idea. And then we're looking at interview questions. If your podcast is interview-based, create more questions you'll think you need, and your interview subject may be quiet or they may answer several questions at once. It's better to have questions you don't use than to run out halfway through. And so what I do was I always had a Google sheet, and I asked them to fill in all their information, their bio and stuff, and I asked them what topics they wanted to talk about, and they would have, say, a main topic, and then a 2 or 3 subtopics they would write in, and then I knew that I had enough stuff to talk about, because I don't really know my interviewees. I'm not about to read their book. I'm not a professional, so remember that, your time is limited, their time is limited. So if you can get some of the questions beforehand, we spoke about that before with influencers, then you're really doing a good job. And so then let's have a look at what else you have to think about. You have to think about copyrights. If you're going to use copyrighted content such as music, make sure you have consent. You can get free content by looking for public domain or Creative Commons audio clips, and there are a great deal of audio clips available online. And of course, practice. View it as a learning experience. Do it yourself, record it on Camtasia or some other recording, and then see how it sounds. The only way you're going to get better as a podcaster is to practice. So it takes persevering and practice, but don't take too long, because you want to make excellent podcasts. There's a lot of P's in this. You need to remember that imperfect's better than no perfection. So what action steps do we have since we're rolling up to 15 minutes? So start planning your first podcast series. How often will you record? How long will they be? What will you call your podcast? For your first podcast episode, outline a rough script, topping points, or interview questions. Look for some royalty-free music you can use for backgrounds, or get a professional from Fiverr to do an intro for you, which is very professional, and you can practice speaking your podcast out loud and record it and see how it goes and how long it is, and see if this is what you want to do. And yeah, those are all the action steps. Start practicing. So yeah, this is great. So next time, we'll talk about the equipment and software needed to podcast, and then we'll go into Libsyn, which is where my podcasts are. And we'll go and have a look at the stats. They're not great because I've stopped most of them, but one of them has really good stats because it has a special software. So we'll go and have a look and see the kind of analytics that you can get for your podcast, where they get distributed, and what kind of things you have to do in order to prepare for a podcast. So let's say that next time will also hopefully be 15 minutes. So next time it'll be Thursdays at 8 a.m. Pacific or 11 a.m. Eastern. And you can go to http://jgtips.com/LETS to sign up and get information on all the things that you can do to get yourself visible. And hopefully by next time I will also have the membership site, so you can go and look at all the previous shows, and even a cheat sheet with 7 ways to get visible. But for now, I gotta go, because it's 15 minutes, and I hope this records on LinkedIn. Thanks. Gotta go back to work.